Well, the verdict is in on Harvey Weinstein, and former Democrat donor, Democrat bundler, friend of the Clintons, friend of the Obamas, Hollywood left-wing power broker Harvey Weinstein is going to prison for a long time. This will be talked about mostly in the context of Me Too and how the Me Too movement led to a change in attitudes about the kind of predatory behavior that Harvey Weinstein engaged in, among others. He was found guilty on one rape count and one criminal sex act count. Could go to prison for up to 29 years. He was not found guilty of the top charges that would have been possible life sentences for either of them for predatory sexual conduct. So he is 67 years old, and he realistically faces spending the rest of his life in prison. Manhattan Assistant District Attorney and her co-counsel argued that Weinstein preyed on vulnerable, naive women who tried to pursue professional relationships with him to advance their careers, only to be sexually attacked, according to New York Post here. Weinstein has been remanded into custody until he is sentenced, and they are going to send him away for a long time. Well, this is a case that I think will have ramifications for other cases like it. Some of the women in this instance continued to have relationships with Harvey Weinstein after the alleged assaults took place. That's, I could understand how a jury would have a problem with that on a beyond a reasonable doubt standard, but I think that Harvey Weinstein his pattern of behavior was just so grotesque that people found him to be such a hateful character that the beyond a reasonable doubt standard clearly did not prevent him from having a unanimous jury verdict against him, leading to possible 30 years or 29 years in prison. He won't get 29. And remember, these are state charges too, so he will be eligible for parole, and I'm sure he will appeal, and this is not over. You'll be hearing more about Harvey Weinstein in the years ahead. But this is a massive loss for the Weinstein defense team and for Harvey Weinstein personally, that's for sure. And a lot of people will view this, I think, as a victory for the Me Too movement. Weinstein was able to get away with a lot because of who he was, because of the connections he had, and what an incredible fall from grace for a guy who was at the absolute pinnacle of the American power structure, particularly in the 90s and the 2000s. It was a guy who could get a movie made that he wanted to get made, put whomever he wanted in that movie, get anybody on the phone, raise the money, was very rich, very connected. Now he's going away. So take what you will from the lessons from that in terms of the legal realities here. But Harvey Weinstein, guilty, and maybe going to prison will be going for a long time. It's a question of how long it is. And there's a good chance Harvey Weinstein is going to die in prison. There's a good chance he's never going to see freedom after this. So that's one news item for you. Then you also have some troubling updates on the coronavirus. And now you're up to 40,000 confirmed cases. I'm seeing a fatality rate that there are some reports the fatality rate's more like 3 to 4%, which is considerably higher, if that turns out to be true, than what we see generally with influenza. Remember, the flu kills thousands of people in America every year, but it tends to be people who are older, immunocompromised, or very young, which is one of the reasons why it's so important that certain people get flu vaccinations, even though the flu vaccination, sometimes they miss the strain entirely. But now you've got Italy in the midst of a coronavirus lockdown effort. Italy's had a number of confirmed cases, a few hundred of them, I think now, and about a half dozen people have died of coronavirus there. China is still the center of this outbreak, Wuhan province in China. The head of the hospital that was treating coronavirus patients died of coronavirus, so there's definitely high risks of transmission inside medical facilities that are treating this. And what they're still figuring a lot out about this. I'm not yet, the stock market today is in a big sell-off. I'm not hitting the panic button here in America over this. I mean, the Chinese should take it very seriously, and I think they are. That it's popped up in Europe now is concerning. And remember, all it takes is one person on one airplane to show up somewhere, and all of a sudden we got a very big problem. And we have to remember that. Interesting that there were I was reading some initial reports about how we shouldn't, these supposed experts were saying we shouldn't have travel restrictions or any efforts at lockdown because of the economic consequences. I don't think that was the right move to take that approach for anyone. I think that you want to try to prevent travel and spread of this disease. They think that, they know that it's spread through droplets in the air. So one very important precaution is face masks. And it's already killed more people, I believe, than SARS. So that now is ratcheting up fears about all of this. But you're most likely to you're most likely to contract this from somebody if you were around them, which if you're in America right now is very, 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 very unlikely. The risk is very, very low. But if you were to come around someone, it's repeated and continuing contact. So it's people that are either caring for you or people that you share a home with. That's where you're most likely to spread it. They don't know how effective, and this is what will really, if they can prove this, then people are going to start hitting the panic button a little bit more. They know that it's from secretions. They aren't sure yet how. It certainly can be spread. Coronavirus can be spread through aerosolized droplets. So if someone sneezes into a room, those aerosolized droplets contain virus. And so then if it gets into your eyes, nose, or mouth, that's the way that these respiratory infections are transmitted. You can clearly come down with coronavirus. And then the main problem is that it's just your lungs fill with fluid, and that causes also problems. You can't really breathe. It causes problems for your liver, and you have organ shutdown or people go into respiratory failure. So bad. It's very bad. That's for sure. If it is effectively transmitted via aerosolized drops, is something that they're still trying to figure out. And there's understandably real concerns about how honest the Chinese government is going to be in this whole process, about what they've learned and how widespread the infections really are. One of the very troubling histories, this is true for SARS, MERS, Middle East Respiratory System, SARS, and now coronavirus as well. Early detection people that came out and said there's a problem here, we've got something happening. Governments, whether it's Saudi Arabia did this, I think it was Saudi Arabia, I don't think it was Dubai, I can't remember. I think it was Saudi Arabia, but when you're the person that says, hey, I think we have to worry about an outbreak here, even if you're right, these authoritarian governments take it out on you. Threaten you, imprison you, come after you. So that's always a reminder about what governments are like when they feel like there's a challenge to the power structure or someone's creating problems for them, even if it's a problem that should be dealt with. I'm not hitting the panic button yet. Producer Mark's not hitting the panic button yet. But if it turns out that it has a high transmission of through aerosolized droplets, then we got more concerns and more things to be worried about. And they're giving, and this is true for a lot of people. Tamiflu they'll give you might help with some symptoms, but most doctors will tell you Tamiflu for the standard influenza strains that come out isn't really all that effective. I forget what it is. They've actually given some people HIV medication to try to help with immunosuppression to deal with this virus. But this is your immune system and your health is really the determining factor if you're infected, whether you're going to make it through or not. There's no drug, there's no vaccine, there's nothing that they can really give you. What they end up doing in some of the hospitalized circumstances, some people end up just staying at home and they beat it and they're okay. But in hospitalized situations, they'll give you not just IV fluids, but they'll also give you support to your organs, help you breathe, help your heart keep pumping if you're really in bad shape from the disease. Anyway, I don't think it's gonna. I don't know. I was going to say I don't think it's going to hit America. I don't know. I don't think we're there yet. But the market today is clearly in a little bit of a tailspin because of it, and people are understandably concerned. There's always going to be politics when you're talking about pandemics. That's the reality of a pandemic. I just think that people that sit around whining and complaining about climate change and how it's going to kill us all, and how we need to recycle and how we can't use plastic bags and all this stuff. I think that they need to think long and hard about what their priorities are, because this is a real problem. And clearly we don't have enough resources devoted to vaccination and treatment for upper respiratory viruses like this. All this other stuff, billions and billions of dollars, going to make-believe problems in the scientific world because of people's delusions, because really climate change is a religious belief for people who think they're too smart for religion. And there are consequences to that. This is not consequence-free. So we'll continue to look at what's going on with coronavirus here, but the Freedom Hut's here to tell you that for right now, I think it's all going to be okay, but say a prayer. I did see Parasite over the weekend. The president had caught some heat. I was going to say, the president had caught some heat last week, because he said, whatever happened to Gone with the Wind, why can't we have great movies like we used to? And I'll say this about Parasite. It's the reason Parasite won the Best Picture is because people in the Academy were excited about two things. It's a foreign film, and it's a foreign film that deals with class warfare and is essentially some of the themes of class struggle and socialism. That's what the movie's about. So the execution of it is pretty good. I mean, I'm not a fan of and it's a problem I'm having with Narcos too. I mean, Narcos now is feeling a little bit like a telenovela, because I'm just reading the bottom, because it's all basically in Spanish. There's very little English language in Narcos these days. And so I'm just reading the bottom all the time. I feel like I'm doing prompter practice for TV news. And that's not really how I like to watch things. So I grow tired of that pretty quickly. There are some foreign language films I think are worth it for that, or worth it despite that. Parasite, here's what I'll tell you about it. It's too long. And I know that I'm a little bit out on my own on this one. Movies should be generally 90 minutes to 2 hours. 2 hours is really kind of the max that I want to sit through. 90 minutes is great. I mean, if you can tell the story and have it effective in 90 minutes, that's the sweet spot. That's really where I want things to be. This movie was like 2 hours and 20 minutes long, and there is no way anyone could convince me that there weren't at least 30 minutes of footage that you could have just cut out and it would have made it a better movie. Too long, it drags. And I think that really does matter, because I value my time, and we're all getting used to on-demand and watching serialized content, so that when we have to sit down for 2 hours or 2.5 hours and watch a movie. I mean, Braveheart's like 3 hours long, but Braveheart is amazing. It's the greatest movie of all time, and so 3 hours isn't enough. That's very rare. It's very rare. It reminds me of how I always tell people the first rule of giving any toast or any speech is whatever length you want to do, make it less than that. Because no one ever says, I wish that person had gone on a lot longer. That's almost always true with movies, too. Almost always. It's like, okay, I've done it. I've had enough. I kind of want to go back about my life now. So I thought it was too long. And also, I think that it falls into this. Look, I understand that there's the themes of the movie there's kind of the above ground. There's the people that are up the stairs and people that are down the stairs. People that are down the stairs are lower class and struggling, and they have actual rivers of feces that flood through their apartment, and there's bad, and they want fumigation from the street to come into their home to kill the big bugs they live around. I mean, it's rough. I mean, there's a little bit of a Dickensian vibe that comes through in especially some of the earlier stuff with this poor family. It's basically sort of poor family, rich family, and the poor family finds a way to glom on to the rich family. And then things take a big twist at the end, which, by the way, I saw coming, a million miles away. It's not really surprising at all. But the family that's the poor family is very clever and very industrious, and seems to be rather hardworking and good schemers, and so it's a little hard to see how this family is unable to get out of the basement that they're in, given how hard they work at trying to run these scams and how effective they are at it. And they seem very energetic and appealing and smooth and intelligent. And, they're good. They're good at being con men and women, basically. But they've tried so hard to get out of the basement and they can't. I'm not saying that never happens, but it struck me as a little bit the one of the underlying themes of this seems to be that the upper class family is, arrogant and kind of naive and doesn't get it and is dumb. I mean, they're not sympathetic. The upper class family is not sympathetic. The family that gloms onto them is made very sympathetic throughout the movie, and you end up saying to yourself, okay, well, why is this family living in the basement, and why is this family living up the stairs in the beautiful house that's idyllic and where people spend too much money on foolish things, and whereas the poor family doesn't have enough money for important things, right? Why does this disparity occur? And ultimately, what you take away from this is that it's a question of luck and it's injustice. I don't think that's really the way that it tends to work out in real life. Now, people do have hit with hard times, hit with a serious illness, hit with a car. People have alcoholism. There are things that come up that can derail one's economic progress in life. But it tends to be the case, from what I've seen, that if you are intelligent, hardworking, and persistent, you can better your circumstance in this country. And I think it's true in South Korea too, where they have a pretty dynamic economy that's done very, very well. Certainly compared to North Korea, where everyone's the same. South Korea, you got people living in the basement, people living in the big house. North Korea is the society built on all equality. Everyone's completely equal, and everyone's just living in slums, basically, except for the very thin echelon of, by the way, it's not even really slum, worse than slums. They're prisons, really, effectively. They're all living in a giant prison. Looks like a prison, food's like a prison, except for the actual Communist Party, who, of course, have access to goods from the rest of the world and effectively benefit from the capitalism that they say they hate so much, because they'll bring in all these imports and all the rest of it. So I thought it was a pretty well done movie for what it was, but I think some of the ways it's thematically presented, it's a big class warfare vibe. A lot of envy of the stupid, unfeeling, uncaring, wealthy people, and a lot of look at this family that's just scrapping to get by and doing what they have to do in order to be, in order to just be able to feed their children from the poor family. I mean, is that really the lesson of capitalist free market societies, where there is rule of law and there is the right to rise, or the ability to rise? Is that really what we take away from it? Hey, here I am talking. At least it's a movie that makes people think and talk, which I will give it credit for that. At least it was a worthwhile experience in that regard, and it is well executed. There's some very clever, kind of funny sequences in it, and I think it's good. So, I give it a B+. Best Picture? Well, no, but a lot of the best pictures in recent years, I mean, that movie Birdman with Michael Keaton, for example, was just terrible. So I can't even remember some of the more recent. And the movie with the woman who has a sexual relationship with her aquarium pet, I didn't like that one either.
It's time for roll call.
Roll call. I missed you all over the weekend, so I'm excited to get a chance to do some roll call here. So if you want to be a part of it, it's very easy. You just write us a message on Facebook at facebook.com/Buck Sexton, or send an email to teambuck@iheartmedia.com. Got a bunch of roll call to get to today. And also hope you're having a chance to check out the Buck Sexton show. That is the local WOR show here in New York City, the New York area. You should be able to hear it if you're even within a few hundred miles of New York, I think. I think 710 WOR the signal goes quite a way. It's quite a ways. It's an AM, on the AM dial. So please do tune in. The more people listen to that show, the better, because we got big plans, not just for the digital world, but for terrestrial radio too, here for the Freedom Hut. All right, Karen. Hi, Buck. You are right, as usual. Biden, Bloomberg, and Sanders are all too old to be boomers. After World War II ended in 1945, large families were popular. This was referred to as the post-war baby boom, hence the term boomers. Biden, Bloomberg, and Sanders are also too young to be the greatest generation. They are members of the so-called silent generation, often defined as born between 1928 and 1945. Yep. Karen, thank you. That was the generational description that I was looking for. You are all correct. And see, that's why I know I've always got to come correct to the Freedom Hut. I got to bring the accuracy, because people listen to the show, know a lot of stuff, and expect me to tell them things that are correct all the time, as they well should. And that is something that we adhere to as a fundamental tenet of the show. Don, good evening, Buck. I agree with you. We can't take Bloomberg as a Democratic nominee lightly, but the difference in two billionaires running for president is one is trying to buy back his conscience with Americans, and the other doesn't have to. Obviously, the Democratic Party unknowingly vetted President Trump over the last 3 years and have confirmed our president still has his conscience. Shields high. Okay. Thank you so much, Don. Appreciate your analysis. Mark, I've been a Buck Sexton fan since the Red Eye days with Greg Gutfeld, and only recently found your podcast and have become a daily listener. Well, Mark, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Please keep listening. Looking at the Dem presidential field, I have to wonder if the DNC leadership decided months ago that they were going to field the B team this year, knowing very well that beating an incumbent with the best economy in the last half century is a hill too steep to climb. Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, none of them are inspiring. Sacrifice this group in 2020 and save your A team for 2024. Continued success with all your endeavors. Shields high. Mark, thank you so much. That's great. But yeah, I used to have a lot of fun doing the Red Eye show with Greg Gutfeld back in the day. Kind of funny. It's actually the first Fox News show I was ever on as a guest was Red Eye with Greg Gutfeld. And then I think the second one was Megyn Kelly's show. So I'm always thankful to Megyn Kelly. I haven't heard from Megyn in a very long time, but I'm always thankful to Megyn for putting me on in prime time and being the first person willing to do so. Haven't heard from Greg in a while, but I'm sure he's a very busy guy. Let's see what we have here. Oh, yes. You asked about the B team, or you brought up, rather, your analysis of the B team here and whether Democrats are essentially doing what sometimes a professional sports team will do. See, producer Mark, I know about this. Like, does this apply in hockey too? I know that sometimes in football, or no, a better example is basketball. In basketball, you want your team to lose toward the end if they're already stinking because you want them to get a good draft pick. Is this true in hockey as well?
Pretty much in every sport other than baseball, except hockey and basketball now have draft lotteries. So even if you're the worst team, you only have a 25% chance of getting the number
I didn't know that. I thought if you're the worst, you got the best pick.
It used to be that way, but then it wasn't as fair. It was
because then teams would tank.
Teams would tank.
Right,
yeah, exactly.
At the end, that would make sense.
In the NFL, you can still tank.
Okay.
That's the only sport you can really do it.
Yeah, but that's because then you're tanking, but like you're getting crushed out on the field and it actually hurts. So I feel like it's
exactly.
You don't want to, you don't want to leave your QB like, I just decided not to block for him today because we want to lose this game. Like that's a bad idea.
Exactly.
Whereas basketball, you can kind of just let them go take an extra layup or two and be like, all right, we lost this one.
Or just play your terrible players.
Yeah, or just play your bench squad. That's it. When did they make that change? It was the last few years?
Early 2000s.
Okay, it's been a little
it's been
while.
a long time.
Yeah, but anyway, that's kind of what Mark is saying here is that, do the Democrats put forward a weak field? No, man, Mark, I think that's the field is weak. Mark, not to be confused with producer Mark. The field is weak because it is. If they had, look, if they could run Obama a third term, I think they would. And I think that would be formidable. Let's be honest about it. That would be more formidable. Obama coming back out, if he could, which he can't, but Obama coming back out and running would be certainly a stronger candidate than any of these Democrats. Any of them, honestly. Doug, hey, Buck, I heard your passing reference the other day about The Americans. So what do you think? Doug, I think The Americans is an excellent show. I give it an A-. I think it's definitely worth watching. I've got a few shows in the mix these days I'm trying to get through, but I also have books to read and research to do for this show. So, I don't have that much free time to get through any of this, but I'm into The Americans, Narcos, and the most recent season of Peaky Blinders right now. And when I'm folding laundry, I put on The Office because it's just amazing. It's just never. If you're looking for something that lets your brain just sort of turn off, I think The Office is, in a good way, The Office is a top choice. But yeah, man, I think The Americans is really good, and it gets into a bit more of the realities of espionage, which is when you're talking about human sources and human intelligence. A lot of espionage is leveraging personal relationship, understanding psychology, That's what source running is. Espionage, spying. James Bond is cool for what it is, but James Bond is effectively like a paramilitary operative who wears black tie a lot. I mean, it doesn't really bear any resemblance whatsoever to actual espionage and intelligence work. That's spycraft. I mean, James Bond is not really a spy. He's kind of an action hero. He's kind of an action hero who works for a spying agency, but doesn't really, is very little, especially in the more recent versions, there's very little that resembles actual spy work. Whereas the Americans, the way the FBI handles sources, and look, it's stylized, and everyone's having affairs with everybody and doing all kinds of, but it's a show. You got to watch the show, right? I mean, you got to enjoy it. But the Americans does a pretty good job of that. Matt, Buck, love your show. I've been a long-time Rush and Hannity listener. Discovered you about a year ago. I love the imitations you perform, especially Granny Warren and Mike Bloomberg. You have a loyal listener. Keep up the good work. P.S. Producer Mark is awesome, too. Producer Mark, look at you. A little high five, a little shout-out, huh? A little extra pep in your step today.
I like these messages, yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Producer Mark is awesome, too.
He is?
Yeah. Well, there we have. I mean, the people have spoken. What else can you say? Michael, Buck, just wondering your thoughts on the conservative message being propagated more these days than we are aware of, and do you think it's starting to win over more people than we think? There are so many podcasts and radio shows with great communicators. Your continued rise in footprint, YouTubers, Turning Point, Daily Wire, is the conservative message beginning to resonate more than we are aware? Shields high. Michael, the answer to your question is, I hope so, but I don't know. There is definitely a surge in young conservative footprint in the digital world, and you mentioned some of the big players in that space. I've been very adamant in the last couple of years about doing more and more, because we have a terrestrial radio show here that's on 160 stations across the country, but I also want us to be building out as big of a digital footprint as possible. I mean, I may have been retweeted by the president 5 times over the weekend, I think it was.
Well, this 4. Weekend too? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I had to get some butter and get your head through the door.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
It's true. I had a little pep in my step from the weekend too. The POTUS. He likes the Buck tweets, man. I don't know what to say.
You got to get him on the show.
Thanks for putting up the new show imaging though. By the way, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So people actually are seeing that the Freedom Hut now. We're very stylized in here on our social.
Your Twitter
black and white.
Your Twitter heading is just your head now.
Yeah, it's just my head, which I don't know if it's going to fit in that if it keeps on getting retweeted by the president.
Just barely got it fit.
Yeah, we had to do a little bit of resizing because the cranium is massive. So yes, there is more of a digital conservative footprint. I hope it's going to convince more people. I never get asked to speak at college campuses, including my own college, which I don't know why that is, but I get asked to speak at other things, but I'm not considered part of the college speaker crew. But I would love to speak to more college kids and be able to reach them younger, because I think people, even if they're not necessarily ready to hear the truth, I think they appreciate intelligent arguments. I'd like to think that. I'd like to believe that. Caroline, sweet Carol. You were speaking of the generations the other day, and you missed one, the silent generation. There we go. Yes, we kind of dealt with this. They're called silent because they were born into a very scary world and just kept their heads down. They remember blackouts and having metal name tags in case of attack. They came of age in the 1950s, saw the economic boom, settled down to have a normal family life, and then wham, the upheaval of the 1960s hit, and they had to shut up and put their heads down again. Also, you spoke of Gen Y. Gen Y is the same thing as millennials. They came after Gen X, and they came of age around the year 2000. So it was Gen Y, Gen Y2K, and then we finally settled on calling them millennials. Is that right? Is Gen Y millennial the same? Do we know?
I feel like I've heard that before. I know we didn't have a name for a long time, and then a couple of years ago we became millennials.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's. I mean, I'll check on this. We'll find you the fact, because that's what we do. We're bringing the facts. Katrina, thank you for having Sean Parnell on again and highlighting his candidacy against Conor Lamb. You have fans in the Pittsburgh area, too, by the way. And how have you never heard of Primanti Brothers? Seriously, a Pittsburgh icon. You got to come to the Berg and try one. I've never been to. Have you ever been to Pittsburgh, producer Mark?
Yeah, a few times.
Nice place.
It is.
I hear
a
actually it's a
very
really
nice city.
really nice city that's really had a renaissance in the last 20 years or so.
Yeah, I was there a few months ago for a wedding.
I know they filmed a lot of the Christopher Nolan Batman movies
Did
in
they?
downtown Pittsburgh.
I didn't know that.
That's actually where a lot
But
of the scenes were.
Primanti's, I know you're not a big sandwich guy because of the
Yeah,
celiac,
bread,
but
yeah.
they put French fries on the sandwich.
Ooh.
That's their big claim to fame.
When I used to eat gluten, I remember being in Greece for the summer, and they would take essentially, in the gyro, they would take French fries and stuff it in with the shawarma meat, and then wrap it in a warm pita.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Which was good.
Greek is one of my favorite cuisines.
Greek food when
Love
it's good is really fantastic. I totally agree. I'm actually getting hungry right now just thinking about it. But yeah, no. But look, Sean Parnell has been a friend of mine now for. I mean, we're going to be friends going on 10 years here soon. So Sean and I go way back. He's a fantastic guy. And the great thing is I'm not a journalist, so I can support who I want and say what I want. And I want the Freedom Hunt to do everything it can to help Sean Parnell. I want to see him in the halls of the United States Congress. He'd be a great congressman. He's a great dude. So, and that's a big race. Him and Connor Lamb. People are going to look at that as a bellwether for, in a state of Pennsylvania, you got two veterans. Connor Lamb is kind of the Mayor Pete school of, impressive resume, a little bit sounds a little centrist sometimes, but really, really isn't. And he's going up against Sean Parnell, who's just, he's just the dude you want to have as your good buddy, as your next door neighbor, as the, coach of your son's little league team, and as your United States congressman. We want Sean Parnell to win. So I'm going to do whatever I can to help my man Sean. Eric, responding to Friday's show, I heard you knock Marvel movies, but haven't said anything until now. Holy bleep, Buck. Please watch the Marvel movies in order. Once you do that, you'll see they're fantastic and a fantastic franchise. Producer Mark is right. You are wrong. Love you. Shields high. Look at this. Producer Mark is right. I'm wrong. Now this is what it's come to. This is what it has come to in the hut. There's like a mutiny going on over the Marvel movies.
I mean, that has been true for months that we've been arguing about this.
I know. I think there's like four. I can't even think of anybody who agrees with me on the Marvel thing. They all agree with you. I was watching the other week, and there's the Scarlett Johansson and the guy with the bow and arrow. Who's scared of a guy running around with a bow and arrow? I know. Yeah, everyone thinks you're right and I'm wrong. It's fine. Whatever. I got to keep people on their toes. Can't be right about all the things all the time. At least I'm willing to watch it. But the one that I'm watching, they're all moping around. Oh,
yeah, because you're watching the end of
billions of people were killed by Thanos. I'm like, what am I watching?
You have to watch the whole build up to that movie.
It's
you
like
can't
watching
just watch
a big funeral. All right. Well,
it's like you watched the 8th Harry Potter movie, but didn't watch the first 7.
How many Avengers movies are there? Roughly.
In the ones that you would have to watch for this, probably like 10 or so.
What?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I honestly thought there were like 3.
It starts in 2008. It goes from Iron Man on is this portion of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I did like Iron Man, so I'm not a comic book hater. That's why I haven't been.
It just started with Iron Man, and then this chapter of the MCU ended with Endgame.
You know what I think is an underrated comic book movie, by the way? Blade. I thought that Wesley Snipes. What?
What was Blade?
Dude, it's good.
All right.
It's good. Do you like vampire stuff though, or
not really?
Yes, you're not a vampire guy. You got to be into the vampire stuff if you're gonna like Blade. Anyway, that was that was like my favorite comic book adaptation movie, other than Batman and the original. I like the original Superman because he's like so all American. I kind of liked him, even though if you look back, like the tights were a little weird.
There hasn't been a good Superman movie in a
long time. The Superman versus Batman movie. Well, I'm almost like,
was awful.
Is this a parody?
Oh my god!
Are they kidding?
I wanted to leave the theater.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
How
awful.
could they make such a bad movie with 2 such iconic figures? I don't understand.
I'm just hoping the new Batman movies are good.
Wait, who's in it?
Robert Pattinson.
I am super skeptical.
I am too. But
that guy. Is he the Twilight guy?
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm. I'm skeptical also, but I'm still going to watch it.
Ah, man. All right. We'll see. Alice said, "Hi, Buck. I had to chuckle when you said your listeners are complaining about Bloomberg ads. My husband runs a radio company, and Bloomberg has placed a big buy. They want to run copy using the call letters of his station to address listeners. People might not understand the political ad laws, but they sure know when they're offended by an ad. Not to mention, this is ground zero Bernie country. Not sure how this will play out, but it's an example of how the man's and his team's complete arrogance." Yeah, like I've been saying before, it's actually like a law thing. There's nothing I can do. So please don't get mad. There's nothing I can do about the Bloomberg ads. hi, this is Mayor Bloomberg. Producer Mark and Buck love me and want to vote for me. It's like, we can't stop him from saying it, Producer Mark.
I feel like people just turn the podcast down when they hear us explaining why we have Bloomberg ads because we keep getting messages.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what else to say. So that's the public service.
I'm just going to
announcement.
reply to you with the same canned message I've sent everyone else.
That's the way to do it. All right, everybody. You know how to contact us tomorrow. The show will be amazing, as it is every day. Love you all. Shields high.